Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on a pretty nice evening here in Toronto to dive into an exciting topic for us. We're often ringing the bell about heat pumps, but at this time of the year, I think talking about solar is really exciting and really top of mind. And this moment of talking about solar is really exciting too, not just because the panels are getting more efficient, not just because the panels are getting cheaper, not just because storage is making peak shaving possible and arbitrage possible, but also because there's a ton of really amazing and free support programs to help people get solar on their roofs. And so we thought this would be a good opportunity to bring together some really experienced people who are offering these support programs, who know the inside and out of solar in Toronto to host this webinar. So thanks for joining us, guys. I think it's going to be a really interesting and informative one, and I hope it helps people along their journey to get those charismatic and show-stopping and conversation-starting solar panels up on roofs, as well as potentially battery storage as well to really extend the capabilities of those solar panels. So while you're joining here, I'm just going to throw a quick introduction poll up here, which is just essentially asking you what excites you about solar, what gets you interested. You'll see that there's a name and email field there. That's not consenting to marketing. That's just in case we want to follow up on some of the results. We have the emails there. You're not consenting to our newsletter by putting your email there at all. So I just wanted to call that out as the poll goes up. And once you've done that, feel free to let us know where you're calling in from, if that's a neighborhood in Toronto, or if you're outside of Toronto, where are you calling in from? Maybe we got people dialing in from across Canada. I'm always very curious to hear about that. So a couple more people have joined, so I'll just go from the top again really quickly before we go into our run of show here. So thanks again for joining us for our Solar Made Simple webinar tonight. We're going to get into the support programs, some of those payback periods of costs and FAQs. But I think the real valuable piece of this isn't that we're going to be able to give you everything you need to know about solar and storage in the hour that we have here, but we are going to be able to point you to some really amazing support programs and some excellent experts that are there to move you along the journey to a more energy efficient and sustainable home, move you to that place where we're in the Jetsons, where you're generating the electricity on your own roof and really running your home off of batteries. I think it's really exciting stuff, and we're seeing more and more adoption across Canada. So hopefully this webinar can be part of your journey there. Sweet. So I'll move into the land acknowledgement and the run of show here, and then I'll introduce our speakers and I'll start passing it along to get into the core content of what we're getting into today. So I'll start with the land acknowledgement. If you guys have attended one of my webinars before, you know that this comes in two parts for me. The first part is the retrospective, the standard land acknowledgement that you've likely heard before. Then I always follow it up with a how can we practice reconciliation today, a sort of aspirational, forward-looking version of that land acknowledgement, which usually involves some sort of action that we can take. So beginning with the standard one, we would like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And Toronto's home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people as well. We'd like to acknowledge that Toronto's also covered by Treaty 13. That one was signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty was signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. So that's our standard one. And then moving into the forward-looking one, I'm usually recommending some sort of advocacy or following an artist. Today's is more of a personal recommendation. I just finished this book by Richard Wagamese. It was his first book. And it was one of those reads where the entire time I'm reading, I'm looking up at my partner and telling her about how awesome this chapter I read was and just bugging her and interrupting her all the time. So it's one of those books that like really you want to share with other people. So that's what I've done with you guys as well. See, I'm bugging you about it. And the reason for that is he deals with the indigenous worldview with so much humor and humility and insight and such amazing storytelling. And without turning away from the pain and the betrayal there, but also pointing the way forward with some really amazing stories and metaphors, really making the Indigenous worldview accessible even to a non-Indigenous audience. So I find myself deep in reflection reading this book, and it ended up being a surprisingly spiritual read. So that's why I bring it up here as a way to kind of practice reconciliation and hopefully something you can share with your friends. And I will be checking the amount of copies that are available on Libby throughout the webinar. So if they run out, I'll know we've succeeded. Okay, so that's the end of the land acknowledgement here. This is our run of show today. So we're going to start with the intros and housekeeping, which we're working through now. I'm soon going to hand it over to Chris, and Chris is also going to be joined by Jordan. So Jordan is the founder of Glean. We'll get into all that in a second. So just keeping an eye out there that we're going to have a kind of double feature in that section. They're going to pass it over to Michelle Hjort as well. And Michelle's going to get into thinking about capacity and a note on plug-in solar as well, which I know is top of mind for lots of people, as well as the support that Energy Neighbour can provide. I'll close with some solar surprises, some words of advice from homeowners that we've worked with, some questions that I've seen online answered in our support community. So pulling out those things that you can know in advance, these little surprises and edge cases. So if they come up in your installation, they're not totally unusual and you know what to do next. We'll close with the Q&A. So feel free, of course, to be putting your questions in chat as we're going. When I'm not presenting and when our presenters are waiting, we'll be engaging with chat. But at the end is when we're really going to dive into the specific questions there and invite people to unmute if they'd like. And we'll end the recording at that time as well, so we can be really candid, get into the details there. Which is on to the next slide, which is we are recording. I made sure I recorded way early so I wouldn't forget. There'd be a lot of disappointed registrants if you forget. So we got that rolling. And I always share a handout with all registrants afterwards with some slides, some links, and next steps in there as well. So something to look forward to in your inbox tomorrow. So a brief intro on tonight's speakers before we run into the proper presentations here. So we're going to start with Chris Canners. So Chris works over at TAF and has just been in the weeds of solar for many years. So is an excellent resource to be bringing in and talking about their new Home Solar Accelerator program that they're offering here and how that can make your journey to solar panels as simple and straightforward as possible. And Jordan's going to come in and join him as well. So Jordan's founded a company called Glean, which is very involved in solar installations as well. And I'm excited to hear what Jordan says because he's going to have a little bit more insight on the side of the installer and industry side of things as well. So I think they're going to have a nice sort of balanced perspective there. Michelle, we've had on before, so we're happy to have Michelle back. Michelle is a clean energy coach with Energy Neighbor. She'll get into a little bit of Energy Neighbor's support programs and what they do. And Energy Neighbor won a fantastic award last year for their service and their environmental work. That was the 2026 Clean 50 Award. So we're always excited when Michelle agrees to join us for a webinar. So nice to have you back. And I'm going to close off. I'm the homeowner journey manager. I do the marketing with Toronto Home Energy Network. Homeowner journey, that just means as you're on your way to making your home more energy efficient and sustainable, that will help connect you with the experts and the right guides and the webinars and the recordings that you need to make that journey as simple and stress-free as possible. So with that, I'll ask Michelle if you're ready to take over sharing screen and we can get into your presentation there.
I think that we were going to start with
Chris.
Jordan.
You're right.
Yep, we're with Chris.
Good thing I introduced it before. I mean, all right, Chris, I'll ask you to take over the share and we'll get started with your presentation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Nathan. And thanks to the network for this opportunity to talk with all of you. And thank you to all of you for coming out tonight and listening to us pontificate about solar and storage. My name is Chris Canners. I'm the Director of Electrification, of Clean Electrification at the Atmospheric Fund. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the stage a little bit. I'm going to talk a bit about TAF, who started Home Solar Accelerator, and then I'm going to pass it over to the real experts Jordan, who leads the team at Home Solar Accelerator, and Michelle, who leads Energy Neighbour, and we'll get into much more of a discussion. But first, I really wanted to just set the stage a little bit, tell you a little bit of why, I'm the director of clean electrification, so I love to talk about electricity. It's hard to get me to stop once I get going. And also talk a bit about solar on a macro level. Then I'll hand it over to Jordan to talk more about the specifics for what's important for all of you today in your homes. So TAF, the Atmospheric Fund, for those who don't know, we're a nonprofit endowment fund. We have funding from all three levels of government. And what we do is with that money, is we do granting, we do direct investing, we do programs like Home Solar Accelerator, we do policy advocacy, and we also do research and communications, all with the purpose of reducing urban greenhouse gas emissions and managing climate for urban regions. We're part of a larger network of 7 other cities that have similar organizations called the Low Carbon Cities Canada Network. And so we're doing this across the country, and really what we're about is trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we started Home Solar Accelerator because we saw that there was a need to help homeowners with their solar and storage journeys. It's very complicated. There's lots of questions. There's lots of different types of information out there. And we know that homeowners are interested in this technology, and yet it's very challenging on a day-to-day basis to have the right information and make these kinds of investments when you have so many other things to do. And so I like to think about Home Solar Accelerator in 3 different buckets. Jordan is going to get into a lot more of it, but the first priority is education. So we really want to let everyone know real, unbiased information about home solar and storage and where it's at in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area. So we have a website, solaraccelerator.ca, you can check out. It has a ton of different information. The second part of the program is a free concierge service. That's the part that Jordan runs. And it's there to help homeowners like you understand solar and storage if it's right for them, right for you in your home, understand the real costs, the benefits, any of the challenges that might exist for your specific home. And if you want, they can get you quotes if you're going that far. The third part is really trying to make the system work a lot better. We want to reduce friction, reduce soft costs, and make it a lot easier for all of us to access home solar and storage for your home. So that's the purpose of the program that Jordan will get more into in more detail. But like I said, I love to talk about electrification and solar. It's hard to talk about solar without talking about electrification. So I'll start with electrification. Some of the things I like about it are it's clean. Now, I work for an urban climate organization, so we need to talk about greenhouse gases. So electricity can generate it cleanly. It's not a fossil fuel. You can generate it without using that stuff. And so that's really great. We're not putting this stuff in the air. Once we put emissions in the air, it's really hard to get them back out. And that's something I love about solar too, is that you're not putting any emissions in the air when you're operating it. The other thing about it is we're not burning stuff inside. Indoor air quality are big issues now. We're learning a lot more about burning fossil fuels inside our homes. And that's not something you get with electrification. One of the other things I like about electricity is that it's very efficient. When we think about internal combustion engines, like in a typical car, that's about 30% efficient. When we look at electric vehicles, those are about 80% of efficient. So we're using a lot less energy to do the same stuff. Same thing with heat pumps in your home. Your heat pump is about 3 times as efficient as your gas furnace. And that's the magic of electricity. So we're using a lot less energy to do the same work, and that has knock-on effects on our environment. We have to extract a lot less. We can do a lot more with this. We can do the same things with a lot less energy. And one other thing is that it's distributed. This is a beautiful thing as well about electricity, is that solar can be made, you can generate electricity on your home. That's not something that was easily done not that long ago. And so what's happening right now is you're moving from the electricity grid, the way it's always been operated, to the way that it's always going to be operated, because we're having these distributed energy resources, whether it's a car battery or whether it's your heat pump or whether it's solar and storage. All of those devices are on the grid, and it's making things more complicated, but in a distributed way. And I think it's also wonderful for all of us to be able to own these assets, and you can build wealth and resilience using those distributed assets. one of the I have so many things about electricity. One of the other things I love about electricity is that it does everything for us. You can heat your home, you can heat your water, you can run your car, you can run your computers, you can do all the stuff you need to with electricity. And that's not the same case with gas or other types of fuels that can't do all those things. So electricity is the solution. We don't need to double build our infrastructure. We can have one piece of infrastructure, the electricity infrastructure, that will deliver us cold drinks and hot showers. And that's really what everyone wants. The other thing I really like about electrification, but in particular solar, is that it's become very cost effective, especially on a big scale. So in Ontario this year, the government has started to procure electricity at the commercial scale, at a larger scale. And what happened is in a competitive procurement, the technologies that won out were solar for the most part, with some wind, as well as batteries. And so we know, and it came in at a very low cost. The government doesn't want to tell you this. They didn't even mention solar when all this happened. But the fact of the matter is, we got lower costs for electricity than we've ever seen in the province before. And that's because wind and solar and batteries have decreased dramatically in cost. And that's a really good news story. The thing for Ontario itself, I remember when solar panel prices used to be about 75 cents a watt about 10 years ago. Now they're about 20 cents a watt. Through Home Solar Accelerator, we've seen the costs of batteries decrease rapidly as well, even since last year. So this is continuing to happen. Solar, electricity, and storage are the sort of the new kids on the block, and it's only going to get better from here, in my view. The final thing is, electricity solar is amazing. This reduction in costs for all these technologies has really driven uptake on a global scale. And we want to see that same uptake happening here in Ontario. So we see 25% growth year over year in global solar production. And in fact, solar electricity is now generates more electricity than nuclear or wind across the globe. And it's overtaken both those technologies in 10 years. So electric generation is really taking off, and we really want to see that same thing. What we see in Australia, for instance, is that about half of the homes in Australia now have rooftop solar. And that's an amazing thing. We say similar things happening in Pakistan, where they imported 17 gigawatts of panels, which is about half of the installed capacity that we have in Ontario. So it's really incredible growth for solar, and we see that coming to Ontario as well. And what we want to do through Home Solar Accelerator is reduce the friction that we see, make it a lot easier for homeowners to access solar and storage and understand the benefits and the challenges, and make it really easy for people to make this choice, because this is where we believe the world is going. So one thing I wanted to say before I hand it off to Jordan, one of the things you can really do to help us use Home Solar Accelerator. It's there for your benefit. It's free, and there's wonderful people on the other end like Jordan, who know a lot and will help you move through this process. And if it's not right for you, that's okay. What we want you to do is tell your friends, family, and neighbors about Home Solar Accelerator. Get the word out. We want people to use this program. It'll help educate everyone and make you more comfortable with solar and storage, and make sure that we get as much going as we can and make those costs lower, as well as make the friction lower. So really appreciate your time. I'll hand it over to Jordan now to talk more specifically about the Home Solar Accelerator process, and look forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. Just want to confirm. Can you guys see my screen? Thumbs
Not
up?
yet.
Nope.
All right, we're looking good.
There we
now.
go. How's that? Great.
That's right.
Okay, so yeah, thanks so much, Chris, for that introduction. So, one of the great programs that TAF, among many, one of the great programs that TAF has come up with is the Home Solar Accelerator, which is the program that I'm running right now with a couple of other folks. It's essentially a solar advisory service. So It helps homeowners learn about solar, get quotes, and compare quotes. And so basically, I'm going to run through that process, those three sort of steps, and take you through that. And then once we finish with that, then I've got some sort of frequently asked questions I'm going to address and some fun stuff there. Um, so as Chris actually mentioned, solaraccelerator.ca is the website we've created for the program. There's some great resources on there addressing myths, frequently asked questions, explaining net metering. We have a rebates page, things like that. So it's definitely worth checking out. If you get there and you decide that that it's worth starting with the program and requesting to participate, there is a form there that allows you to fill out your information. So it's as simple as kind of just some questions about your address, your property, roof age, things like that. And then what happens is that you're going to get matched up with a solar advisor, which actually could be myself or one of my colleagues there. And what we'll do is we'll analyze your property. So we'll analyze, your roof orientation, if there's any shading from trees. We'll look at your hydro bill. We'll look at photos of your electrical panel to see if there's any electricity or electrical constraints. And we'll put together sort of a custom, what we call a solar and storage journey report. And what this does is it takes a look at all of those factors and puts together some sort of solar scenarios for you. So you can see here in this example, scenario 1, solar with net metering, and then there's scenario 2 and 3 that include sort of the rebate. And we'll include, the design images there. We'll include price ranges for each option. And also some other metrics like solar offset and annual electricity, annual solar production estimates, things like that. And what we'll do for each scenario is we will do an analysis, a financial analysis and a savings analysis to determine sort of which of those paths best fit with your goals. Because each property and each homeowner, obviously has different goals and different characteristics. So there's not one path that's perfect for everyone. And that's the particular reason why this report is so useful. We'll also, as you can see there, include sort of a next step section. And this report is really designed to help you choose a path. So, I'll get into it a little bit later in terms of, the differences between net metering versus using the rebate and things like that. But this report is meant to help analyze your home solar potential and which scenario sort of best aligns with your goals. So once you kind of have looked through this report and you've, say chosen scenario 1 and you'd like to move forward and get some quotes, the program has an installer network that we have vetted, and we can go to that network and get each homeowner 3 solar quotes. So we have a list of requirements there. We tend to use installers that are sort of locally owned and operated, are going to be in the market for a long time, have been in the solar market in the GTHA for a long time. They have to be members of Toronto Hydro's Clean Tech Services Network. There's some technical vetting we do, and then of course a code of conduct that we kind of ask them to commit to as well. So for every homeowner, we get them 3 quotes from that installer network. And once we have those quotes, we put them together into sort of an easy to compare format. Sometimes a common complaint we get from homeowners is that it's very difficult, number 1, to choose which installers to get quotes from, but number 2, how to compare those quotes. So this is an example of kind of the document that we prepare for each homeowner. So you'll have, this is sort of the first page there that just runs you through sort of all the characteristics of each quote. Obviously, it won't show installer A, B, and C. It'll show each installer's actual name there. But we're getting into things like pricing, system size, warranties, equipment brands, equipment warranties, estimated production. We do an audit on that production to ensure that each installer is not over or underestimating their production strategically. We also, again, do a financial analysis on each quote to make sure, that you're well aware of the financial implications and the savings that you'll see from each proposal. We're going to do a design analysis, so look at all 3 designs and compare them. And then, what we're going to do is we're going to go through, we actually sit down with each homeowner, typically over a phone or video call, and go through this report. So, that gives each homeowner the opportunity to ask questions about the quotes, and we can kind of dissect the differences between them and uncover, which quotes are checking the most boxes. From here, most homeowners are going to take some time to sort of digest, discuss with their family. And if there is a particular installer they want to move forward with, we can make the introduction, and things sort of proceed from there. And that's generally how the program works. We are available throughout the process for questions. We are available after the process for questions. I've had homeowners reach out to me 2 or 3 years later, asking questions about their system, and we're always happy to help. The next sort of phase I want to get into is I just have some frequently asked questions about solar and storage that I wanted to address. So the first one is kind of a fun one, and it's the one we get a lot, is my roof good for solar? And so I have a couple of examples here, this from Google that I just screenshotted. So this is kind of your typical Toronto flat roof sort of row house. Which comes with its own challenges. In downtown Toronto, there's issues for installers with parking and traffic, and how to get the solar panels up onto a 3-story roof. Oftentimes these homes are fairly old, and so there's engineering assessment requirements that come with that. But it's not to say that it's not possible. I guess if your home does look like, sort of this flat roof, I guess home, there may be, constraints around that. A lot of them sometimes have, this one in particular, it is, fairly large in terms of the number of solar panels they were able to fit on it. Some homes are not necessarily like that. Maybe there's tree shading or something like that, right? And that's kind of in contrast to your sort of typical suburban pitched roof house, where there tends to be a bit more real estate on the roof to work with. So larger system sizes are more possible. There still tends to be some shading issues. You can see in this one in particular, there is that tree right there. I'm not sure if necessarily those panels behind the tree would be very efficient, but we'll save the judgment. But yeah, those are kind of your 2 typical types of roofs that we see, and they're very different, I guess. And so I guess that was a long-winded way of answering the question, is my roof good for solar? It sort of depends. And that's particularly why the program exists, is that we analyze, all different types of roofs and give you sort of a custom analysis based on that tree shading, or, whether you have a flat roof or a pitched roof and things like that. So I mentioned earlier the rebate. So there is a rebate. It's called the Home Renovation Savings Rebate, and it provides homeowners with money up front. So it's an incentive that allows homeowners to kind of reduce the system cost up front, and it's in contrast to net metering for a reason. And net metering it allows homeowners to export electricity to the grid for a credit. So you actually are able to run your electricity meter backwards. and build up a credit. So in particular in the summer, you can send electricity to the grid for a credit and use up that credit in the winter, which is particularly beneficial in Canada, where we have nice long summer days and we have short winter days with snow. So net metering sort of takes care of that seasonality of solar. Now, the rebate is great. However, it does not allow for net metering. So there's sort of a natural sort of fork in the road that the rebate has created. So homeowners are forced to sort of choose between taking that rebate and reducing the upfront cost, or using net metering and kind of improving their long-term savings. And so I'll kind of keep those two paths distinct in the next couple slides here. So how much will it cost? Well, it sort of depends, right? In net metering, you can kind of, the sky's sort of the limit. If a homeowner, is a large electricity user, and has a lot of roof space, the system size can be fairly large, up to 30, maybe even 40 panels. And the costs would sort of accompany that. Whereas, for maybe your downtown Toronto roof, a little bit smaller with a flat roof, maybe, a smaller system in the $13,000 to $18,000 range is all you can sort of fit. So again, it does depend on the home and the amount of electricity the home is using, right? So again, this sort of custom analysis is sort of necessary. Now, on the other side, you have the home renovation savings rebate, which again doesn't allow for net metering, but also it sort of tops out at 5 kilowatts of solar and 16 kilowatt hours of battery. So this is your typical system that everyone goes for, is your 5 kilowatts of solar and your 15 kilowatt hour battery, less the rebate amount, and you end up in that sort of cost range there. The cost range is a little bit wider than with the net metering, because the rebate we find with the battery, there's a little bit more cost variance on the battery side. Now, with costs are savings. So how are savings generated on each side? With net metering, you get to use the solar electricity that you produce in your home, but you also get to export excess for a credit. So that kind of improves the long-term savings. Whereas with the home renovation savings rebate, yes, you do get to also use solar electricity in your home, but you cannot send any electricity to the grid for a credit. Now, there are some additional savings that homeowners can see from having a battery, which I'll talk about in a second. But ultimately, the payback really does vary. We see paybacks as low as, sort of 11 to 12 years. But in other scenarios, if there's shading or other factors there, we see paybacks as long as 30 years. So again, sort of that custom analysis is sort of necessary to determine where you land on that scale. So a big one that we get always is, are batteries worthwhile? And it's worth sort of addressing that there's a bit of nuance to it, because a lot of homeowners come to us thinking that, they can use batteries to load shift and also have power in a blackout. Now, load shifting is when you use the battery to charge overnight when electricity is cheap, and then discharge during the day when electricity is expensive. And you sort of arbitrage those two rates, and you generate some extra savings there, which is great because you get to, reduce your hydro bill even further. However, there's sort of two caveats. And number one is that you're cycling the battery every day, which means that your battery is degrading faster. And the other one is that, when you're discharging it when electricity is expensive, that means that the battery is not fully charged. So if a blackout occurs when you've just discharged your battery, you will not have as much power as you necessarily thought. So a lot of homeowners are forced to choose between or sort of put themselves somewhere on this scale between always keeping the battery charged, so it lasts longer, you're not cycling it as much, and you're always ready for a blackout, versus that load shifting scenario where you're cycling it every day and maximizing your hydro bill savings. So are batteries worthwhile? They can be. It sort of depends on how you want to use the battery, I guess. And the last slide here, I guess, is just looking at what financing options exist. So there's sort of three main kind of options at the moment, besides cash, I guess. Um, there's your bank financing, which is typically a home equity line of credit. Some homeowners are able to kind of time their solar project with their mortgage renewal. So that's another option, but typically it's a home equity line of credit. The nice thing is that financing is sort of you're borrowing against the equity in your home. So the bank sees that as a little lower risk. It's often the lowest, the lowest interest rate option, gives you flexible repayment options. So a lot of homeowners, if they have access to that, they end up going that route. There's also municipal PACE financing, and PACE is an acronym for Property Assessed Clean Energy. So you borrow from your municipality, and you can repay or make the payments on the loan through your property tax. So it's nice and convenient there. Now, these are sort of municipal programs, so they do often have some hoops to jump through. An energy audit is often needed. And sometimes there's some additional fees and things like that and requirements. But these are great programs. And they often do have fairly competitive interest rates, sometimes, as low as 2%. So it's worth kind of looking into. I have the cities that currently in Ontario that currently have PACE programs. So it's worth looking into those if you do happen to live in one of those locations. And the third option, and this is more of, I guess a warning, is that there are private financing options out there, and they're often presented as 0% loans or leases. And the reality is that they're not usually actually 0%. What happens is they are, they may be 0% for a year, and then you're forced to sort of refinance at a very high interest rate. There's often hidden fees and things like that. So if you do see, we often get homeowners coming to us saying, I want to take advantage of the 0% financing offer that I saw the other day. Now, it's important to note there was a 0% financing program through the federal government that ended a little more than a year ago. There is no more 0% financing. And so if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is, and it's always worth taking your time, not feeling pressured, and making sure that you get multiple quotes or reach out to the Solar Accelerator, and we're always happy to help. And that's all on my end. There's links to the Home Solar Accelerator there. If you want to get in touch, we are always happy to chat and happy to help. I will pass it off to Michelle from here.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, Jordan. I really loved seeing the photo that you had of all the quote comparisons laid out side by side, and just making that as straightforward and simple to understand exactly what the homeowner is getting into there. That looked like you've done a lot of good thinking on what the homeowner
Yeah,
gets into there. So that looked fantastic.
awesome.
All right, and looks like Michelle's ready to go too. So whenever you're set up, Michelle, feel free to take it away. And you're muted right now, Michelle.
Okay. You're hearing me now?
Yeah, can hear you well.
Okay. And you got the
And
screen?
the presentation's looking great.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thanks, Jordan and Chris, for that. And now I'll just talk a little bit about how Energy Neighbour is part of the ecosystem of clean energy work here in Toronto. And Energy Neighbour actually started out as a solar pilot project in 3 West Side neighborhoods, Romsey, Brockton Village, and Babby Point, and a little bit of Swansea. And it ended up that 21 residential solar arrays were installed. And at that time, it was similar to why the Home Solar Accelerator started, is that a lot of people were interested, but they were intimidated and overwhelmed. And it was when those rebates first came out, which tends to bring some of the less ethical businesses out of the woodwork. And it can be very hard to understand what you're doing and compare quotes. So Energy Neighbour helped create kind of a group buy. And since then, it was realized that that was something that was really helpful to homeowners. And we ended up moving to do fuller energy retrofit availability. And so now it's really a lot more on the heat pump, water heater, insulating, all of like that Chris was talking about, the full electrification that again, we're very much interested in, but it can be intimidated or overwhelming to figure out what's right for our homes. So we start out by usually doing a 1-hour phone consultation with homeowners to learn about your house, what your goals are, talk through your options, help understand the rebates and the loans that are available, what typical costs are, and then can refer you to good contractors, good energy auditors, good heat pump installers, and then we can now send you to the Home Solar Accelerator for solar. So to be able to build that ecosystem, and we all kind of know who each other are and who the good folks are who can help you out in this space. So that's very great. And then a big part of what we do too is advocacy. So you'll see me at the eco fairs, and also we're doing heat pump parties to help build awareness and build information so that people can feel more confident going forward. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who would be pretty happy to see the gas infrastructure remain in place. Canada is a petro state, and so it's a bit of an uphill battle to build the information and awareness around electrification. So we're all working together to do that. So one of the aspects to understand when you're thinking about solar is the bigger electrification picture in your home, because if you're doing net metering, which for most people is the right move rather than going after the rebate, if you have enough for more 5 kilowatts on your roof, for sure it's economically advantageous to do net metering, but you size it to 1 year's electricity consumption. And if you are intending to do further electrification, you can upsize your solar array. So it's good to know these things so that you can plan for it. If you have current electricity consumption of, say, 7,000, but your roof can take 12,000, well, if you put a heat pump into your home, which will probably do about 4,000 kilowatt hours, you could upsize your solar array to 12 because you're going to be getting a heat pump. And with Toronto Hydro, at least, you can submit an estimate for that heat pump, and they will allow you to upsize the array. So it's good to think about this as a complete project. Usually the pricing on solar panels gets a bit less per panel the bigger the system is, just because there's an upfront cost for them to even come to your house and get started with and they have to put in, no matter how big your array is, they have to do an inverter and they have to do all the electrical. So making it bigger makes sense if you have more room on your roof. And so it's good to know. Typically, when we work with people around electrification, these are the things that they're looking at. Potentially a heat pump, and here I'm showing a picture of an indoor unit and a ductless heat pump head, or the centrally ducted versus a ductless system. Potentially a heat pump water heater, or you could do a conventional electric water heater, and an induction stove, and those tend to be the main elements of electrifying your home. And then the other thing to mention, and Jordan talked about the PACE loans for City of Toronto. It's a help loan. It's around 4%, so it's not as good as used to be the 0% interest. But it's good to know that those can include not only your solar array, but a heat pump, water heater, insulation, windows, and doors. So any of those things are eligible for the HELP loan. You do need to do an energy audit to qualify for most of the things, but you no longer need to do an energy audit for the solar or for heat pumps. So if you're just doing those, you don't need to do an energy audit to qualify. Now, there might be good reasons to do an energy audit, and we always discuss that with people, but you don't need to do it specifically to apply. And one of the things that can be nice about the HELP loan and the PACE loans is that it is attached to the property, not to you. So this could help you do the right thing if say you're not sure how long you're going to be in the house and your furnace fails. Rather than putting in another furnace, which would lock in gas for your house to another 20 years, you can put in a heat pump, use the HELP loan, and even if you move out in a couple of years, that loan is picked up by the next buyer, and they're going to benefit from you having made the home more energy efficient. And the city they're good to work with. They want you to do deep retrofits, so it's approved for up to $125,000. One of the things I think that Jordan covered off a lot of the important points to understand about comparing solar quotes. But if you go out to market and get quotes from other companies, I think it's good to know about what I call solar quote shenanigans. Some of the exaggerations or just outright misinformation that they might put into quotes. And it's another reason to go to somebody like the Solar Accelerator program, who will support you to be able to compare and understand. But I think that what you've probably found is that if you at all do internet search for solar, these marketing driven companies are going to start reaching out to you with they've got some fairly aggressive marketing, and they can send you proposals that look pretty compelling. But some of the things to watch out for is they would potentially, to make the payback look better, they might exaggerate the electricity rates today, and they might have unlikely future electricity rates. For instance, in this one, from a quote that I saw from a homeowner, the Ontario Energy Rebate, and you see in this column, they put it to 0% after 6 years. Well, that's never going to happen. The provinces actually, the OEB approves, the Ontario Energy Board approves to use this to take the edge off of price increases. This year, it was a 23.5% rebate that homeowners in Ontario are getting because the Ford government has a huge expenditure to renew the nuclear fleet. So those rates are going to continue to be in place. And it's just an example of how a solar quote might not be quite accurate. The other thing that Jordan already spoke to, 0% financing, it generally is not 0% financing. And then the other thing is pushing rebates. So as I mentioned, net metering is almost always advantageous, but it looks very tempting to go for that $5,000 rebate. It makes that upfront cost look pretty interesting, but in the end, usually within 3 to 5 years, net metering is going to, you'll have used up that $5,000, and then you won't be getting that benefit for the remaining life of your panels, which is another 25 years at least. So for them to be pushing rebates and give you this compelling upfront price, I would say is something to keep your eyes out for. And then kind of to reiterate, and the other guys talked about this, but like, why should you do solar? It is true that the payback is long in Ontario. We do have cheap electricity here. Like for folks in Germany and California and Australia, their electricity is so expensive that solar is just a no-brainer. But for us, it's a bit longer. But on the other hand, solar is the only energy retrofit that pays for itself. You know, you do a lot of maintenance on your home. You put in a heat pump, or you have to redo your roof, or you do all kinds of things, and none of those are paying you back. But the solar will. And even if it's a 15-year payback, and they have at least 30-year life, that's half. Like that means you're getting half price electricity for the life of that. Now, of course, you're paying for it up front, which it would be nice if it was half the whole way, which you can do with financing. So something to consider. The other advantage is if it's future-proofing your energy prices. So, there's been an uptick in interest when the geopolitics of late have pushed up gas prices. And you realize that there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of things that we can't control out there. But one thing you can control is to put solar panels on your roof and reduce your electricity massively. And that is something that where you can take it into your own hands. There's also the resilience piece. Like right now, the payback on batteries is very long. And it is an area, as Jordan mentioned, where the prices are really coming down and the technology is really improving. So I often suggest that people might get an inverter that's battery ready, like put up solar panels now, get an inverter that's battery ready. And then in a few years, when the prices and the performance and the recyclability and things have dramatically improved, then it might be time to do it. But that resilience is something, like Jordan said, right now you're choosing between resilience or arbitraging, probably not able to do both, but maybe with improved batteries in the future, there'll be more opportunities. There's also the possibility of plugging your EV into your home to do bidirectional. And again, that's not approved yet, but it's coming down the pipe. So there's a lot of things that will be very interesting about batteries coming up that are going to be able to pair with your solar panels and offer resilience. And the other thing is that it's empowering. In when we can feel so overwhelmed and helpless about a lot of things that are going on in the world, especially around climate change, to be able to do something about it is pretty great. Now, so I'm going to just talk to you for a minute about plug-in solar. This is obviously different from putting solar on your rooftop. This is sometimes called balcony solar, and we're calling it plug-in solar. I've worked on a project with this. I pitched to Peter Tabbins, who is my MPP, and he's putting together a bill that he was hoping to get out in May, but it's going to be coming out in the fall term, and would really like you guys to support plug-in solar. It's been in the headlines. We know Germany has 4 million installed. 10 US states have passed legislation. Here in Canada, it's not really legal anywhere. And what we would like, what plug-in solar is basically for it to be approved as an appliance, which means you can simply plug it into an outlet. If it's more complicated than that, then there are barriers. So the ESA says, oh, you need to have a special plug to do it. But you know what? That means you'd have to call an electrician. And it's been proven in a lot of other places that that's not necessary. So we're wanting to push. Here, the barriers are regulatory and technical. It's not impossible for them to be overcome. There's an Ontario group working on this, a national group working on this. I'm working in both of the groups. There's a lot of really interesting things going. We partnered with a German group to support this. We have a webinar coming up with the American group to support it. So we're all collaborating, sharing best practices. The one thing you can do right now is there is a site called pluginsolarpower.ca, and you can simply do a one-click to send a note to your MPP saying you want to support it. And then keep your eyes open for further advocacy and efforts that'll be going on. But that's just a simple thing that you can do right now. And I'm excited about being a part of making this happen. It's great if you can put solar on your roof, but not everybody can. This makes it more, renters and everybody can do this, or if your roof is shaded, but you can put it somewhere else. It's a great opportunity. In the US right now, they're selling these for $300. They're not even approved here yet. So really, really excited about making this happen, and would love for you guys to all support it. And I think we're going to switch to Q&A. So I will stop.
I've got a couple of slides, and then we'll jump into the Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah, but I agree. We'll get into that quickly. I won't hold this for too long. Thank you, Michelle. That was fantastic, and I think you're right to make sure people are thinking about the full picture of, as they're electrifying their homes, what that will mean for their electricity consumption going forward, and having conversations with people like you and Jordan is a good way to figure out what comes first, what comes second, what comes third, and what the cost of those things are going to be in advance. So it's exciting. There's so much support to make your home more energy efficient and sustainable. And we'll be keeping a very close eye on plug-in solar as well. There's so much excitement about this, so much chatter, so many articles being written about it all the time. So it's exciting you're dipping your hands into the advocacy side of that. Super cool. Okay, I'll pull up my slides here. I'm just calling my segment Solar Surprises. So little hiccups, little things that homeowners have shared with us or on the online support forums that we host, which were little speed bumps that came out, year two, year three, or things that they wish they would have known as they were going through their solar installation process. So hopefully I can forward those to you. They tend to be some sort of edge cases, some things that don't happen in the majority of solar installations, but still nice to know in case it comes up in yours. Before I get into our key content here, just at the highest level, Toronto Home Energy Network, we're a nonprofit. That means we got nothing to sell you. Our key is to be a partner in this journey to a more energy efficient and sustainable home and figuring out what the best way to go is for your values and your budget and what your spouse is comfortable with. Whatever you're working with, we want to get you the right introductions and the right resources for you. So my first solar surprise that we're going to get into, a little alliteration. It's stupid squirrels. So you probably already know what's happened to this wire here in this case. The solar panel array that these people are talking about here had a squirrel get in under the panel and start to chew on the wires. Squirrels actually are teething all the time, so sometimes they find plastic really nice to chew into. And so what ends up happening here is if squirrels are able to get behind your panels or pigeons are nesting back there, it can cause damage to some of the electronics. So in this case here, the homeowner with this system had to replace almost half of their solar array. And I bring that up too because often that sort of damage, the critter damage, is not something covered in warranty. So this is something that the homeowner experienced, and it was a big surprise expense for them. So the prevention, fortunately, is fairly straightforward. There's just a steel mesh guard that can go around the outside of the array, and that keeps the critters out. And so I'm just pulling up a photo of here. And bonus points to anybody who recognizes the set that I pulled these images from. It's a very popular PBS show, so drop it in chat for some brownie points there. But the prevention here is very effective, though I don't think it's standard in all installations. So that's something that is worth having conversation with in your installer, whether they already include that. Is it an extra cost? Do they think it's worthwhile for your particular roof and where you're at? Because of course, we have plenty of squirrels and raccoons and other critters crawling around our roofs in Toronto. So something to be thinking about for your installation. The next thing I'm bringing up is actually a study that was done at Jordan's alma mater in the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, and they were able to provide this unbelievably appropriate slide for this particular point that I want to make, which is there's always a lot of chatter about snow on the panels, and Jordan kind of covered this a little bit, but this study that they did is they had these six panels at different angles, and the left ones they cleared off every single day. And I did ask Jordan, he has touched the panels in this photo. And the right ones, they let things build up on and compared the performance over 5 years. The reason they did this, they were hearing wildly different estimates from installers about how winter would affect the annual performance of solar panels in Canada. So they did this 5 year study to really get to the bottom of it. And the great thing is they found that it's a very minor impact having snow build up on the solar panels here. They're finding 4 and 5% reduction. And Alberta, their winters are a little sunnier. Toronto's, ours are a little grayer, so it may be different for Toronto. But the takeaway really is it's not such a big barrier. But some of the posts I was seeing, and a little issue I'll pull up here, is people that had snow piling up on flat solar installations, so with no pitch at all on flat roofs, those people tend to have the snow stay on their panels for longer than people that have them pitched up or on a pitched roof. So another way of saying that is flat panels don't self-maintain. Dust builds up on them, bird droppings don't wash off as easily, water can pool. So I bring this up to say if you're in a flat roof situation, it may even be worth asking the installer about including a little riser so that your panels are up even 5, 10, 15 degrees so they self-maintain a little bit easier and the snow runs off a little faster. And again, what they found in the study was the snow, even at the end of the day, wasn't a huge deal. The production is mostly going down because winter, when we have snow, the days are shorter, the angle of the sun is lower, and it's weaker light. So that's the main thing about winter there. The next one is a little bit connected with Michelle, what Michelle said about electrical panels and thinking about the usage in your home. But I'll pull up this quote or this post verbatim. We had someone who had a solar panel system already installed, only to be told that in order to turn it on, they had to update their electrical panel. So your electrical panel is just the thing that all the appliances in your house are drawing electricity from. Most Toronto homes, that's 100 amps. It works for most people. But she was being told that actually she has to double the capacity of her panel, get it up to 200 amps, which was a $7,000 extra expense at the end of her project. So not something that she had budgeted for at all. But of course, this would be a scary thing for a homeowner to deal with because you're having a master electrician tell you that this is necessary, it's a safety thing, and that's going to be a very difficult conversation to push back on. So I've summarized these bits already, but the confusing thing is solar panels, they generate electricity. They're not drawing a ton of electricity from your home. So unlike adding a big EV charger, it doesn't really follow logically that solar panels would require, a doubling of the electricity capacity in your home in order to get one installed. But the way that you can actually really fact check and get to the bottom of this, if you do end up being told you need to update your electrical panel in order to turn on your solar panels, is Toronto Hydro has something called the peak demand tool. This is something I know Michelle has a lot of experience with, as well as Toronto Hydro has a clean energy coaching service that you can sign up to for free as well. And you can go in and see exactly what the most electrical demand you had at one point last year was. You can do the math to see, okay, I actually have this much space left on my 100 amp panel. It doesn't make sense, or I'm actually very close to capacity. Maybe upgrading does make sense. So you can fact check this claim with some help from some free coaches there. Just two more quick surprises, and I'll talk a little bit about what Toronto Home Energy Network does, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. These two are fairly quick. The first one, I'm pulling up this CBC article by climate reporter Emily Chung. Some of you may know her or have met her at advocacy events here. But she found and was hearing from people that some home insurance companies were actually canceling insurance policies over solar installations. This wasn't happening to most people. And I do pull up this other anecdote that made me chuckle. Alan here says, when I had my solar panels installed, my insurance company was happy to increase my premium, not cancel my premium. So you're seeing both sides here. I bring up this slide more to say solar panels are a major home upgrade. It's worth notifying your home insurance provider that this is coming, and so it's not a surprise later on. The last one was something that someone posted about with the Wi-Fi monitoring. So they had a situation where their solar panels, they had an app that were sending information about the generation that was going on so they could see how their solar panels were performing during the day, if any were failing, a really useful app to have. But they switched their internet provider and that Wi-Fi connection with that app and the solar panels broke. And it turned out it wasn't something the homeowner could reestablish on their own. So they had to call up the installer, had them come out for a visit. It was a couple $100. So just a bit of a headache with something they didn't anticipate would be an issue. So some installers even recommend just having a direct Ethernet connection to the solar panel so the Wi-Fi doesn't end up being a barrier there. So again, a pretty edge case, but I did see it posted about here. So something to know in case you encounter that later. So before I quickly jump into what we do at Toronto Home Energy Network, I'm going to throw up a second little poll here. So this poll is just essentially asking you, what are you stuck on? What would be the most helpful thing? What questions are still lingering in your mind? What support would you like to be connected with? And again, the email and name are there just so we can do follow-up. You're not consenting to marketing by filling those out. So that's live right now. I encourage you guys to fill that out. So very quickly, how Toronto Home Energy Network works. We have grassroots organizers across the city that do amazing events like heat pump parties that Michelle brought up before, where people that already have systems installed in their homes invite their neighbors over to check them out. We also run heat pump and solar parties. And the great thing is There's nothing for sale. You just get to tour a home that may be a lot like yours and talk to someone that went through their journey, hear about their installation, what happened to their bills, what they spent, and actually see these technologies working in another home. So that's an exciting thing that we're happy to work with our partner communities on. We also have online support. That's the Home Retrofit Forum. I encourage everyone to check out. It's just a really carefully moderated Facebook group with really excellent help. And the quotes and posts I was pulling from my presentation were mostly coming from there. You see lots of reactions, 10, 15 comments on each with really helpful stuff. And I'll move on to that and say thank you to our speakers and thank you for everyone who attended tonight as well. And I think this is the great time to open it up to Q&A. So with that happening, I'm going to end the recording here. So